Okay, so picture this. It's Monday morning, your alarm is like blaring, and honestly, you'd rather like swim with sharks than face another day at work.
Oof, yeah, I think we've all been there.
Right. You're definitely not alone if that resonates. But you know what? Today we're diving into this book. It's called Being Happy at Work. And it really caught my eye because it talks about finding more happiness at work, which, come on, who doesn't want that?
For sure.
But it's interesting because it blends like modern psychology with Islamic principles,
Yeah.
which I thought was super intriguing.
Yeah, it's a really unique approach, and I think it really speaks to that universal desire that we all have for purpose and well-being
Totally.
in all areas of life, but
Yeah.
especially at work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I loved about this book is it lays out this really cool framework called PERK. So it's purpose, engagement, resilience, and kindness as these keys to unlocking, happiness at work. But it's not just about feeling good, right? The book actually makes a strong case that focusing on these PERK elements can lead to some pretty awesome benefits
Yeah, absolutely.
for both employees and the organization.
It's not just about, fleeting happiness.
Right.
It's about, like, creating a work environment that really nourishes well-being, that lasts,
Yes.
and then that, obviously unlocks better performance, for everyone.
Totally. It's like increased productivity, reduced burnout, the whole shebang. So let's unpack this whole PERK thing.
Okay.
And we'll start with, you guessed it, purpose.
Makes sense.
So the book talks about kind of moving beyond just collecting a paycheck, which, listen, we all need to pay the bills.
Right.
But it's about finding real meaning in the work that you do.
Yeah.
And there's actually this study they mentioned where people who felt a strong sense of purpose at work were not only happier, but they also reported just greater self-clarity overall.
Mm.
But how do we actually tap into that? Like, how do you actually find your purpose at work?
That is a fantastic question. And it's something that a lot of people struggle with, right?
Yeah.
And the book really emphasizes that it's a really personal journey. It's not something that someone can just tell you, this is your purpose.
Right.
It really suggests starting by reflecting on your core values. Like, what truly matters to you? What kind of an impact do you want to have on the world? Because often our purpose is already kind of baked into our values. Once you have a better grasp on what those values are, then you can start to think about, okay, how does that show up in my work? Or how can I bring those values into my work?
So it's like finding that sweet spot where your passions and your work intersect, right?
Exactly. And now, for some people, that might mean, okay, I need to find a different job.
Yeah.
That's more aligned with what I care about. But the book also talks about this really interesting concept called job crafting.
Job crafting, what is that?
Yeah. So it's basically about becoming like the architect of your own job. So you're proactively taking your current role and you're shaping it so that it's more meaningful to you.
Oh, interesting.
So for example, let's say you're really passionate about sustainability, right?
Okay.
But your current job doesn't really have anything to do with that. Job crafting could look like, finding out if your company has any sustainability initiatives and then maybe joining that team, or finding a way to weave in sustainable practices into the tasks that you already do,
That's interesting.
even in small ways.
So it's about like, even if it's not the perfect job on paper, finding those pockets of purpose within your existing role.
Yes, exactly. It's about taking ownership and
Yeah.
finding ways to make your work matter more to you. And what's really cool is that the book actually connects this idea of like approaching your work with more intention and purpose to the Islamic principle of Ikhlas.
Oh, that's right. The book talks about the connection between PERK and Islamic principles, which I thought was so fascinating. So how does Ikhlas tie into purpose?
Yeah, so Ikhlas is about like sincerity and purity of intention,
Okay.
like in everything that you do. So in the context of work, it's like, okay, I'm not just showing up and doing the bare minimum or, just for a paycheck. It's about how can I approach my work as, as something that is actually contributing to something bigger than myself.
I love that. So it's like it adds this whole other dimension, right? It's not just about you and like climbing the corporate ladder. It's about how your work can actually be in alignment with this like higher purpose.
Exactly. And that focus on intention can make even like, those more mundane tasks feel a little bit more meaningful.
Totally. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so we've tackled purpose. What's next on this journey to workplace bliss?
Right. So having a sense of purpose, that's a fantastic foundation.
Hmm.
But to really thrive at work, we need to feel energized and excited about the work itself.
Okay.
And that's where engagement comes into play.
Engagement, it's that feeling of being, like, totally absorbed in what you're doing right.
Yeah.
Like, you're in the zone.
Yeah.
You're actually excited about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. You're motivated, you're challenged, you really feel connected to your work.
And I feel like everybody wants that.
Right.
Like, imagine, Monday morning rolls around, and instead of that, like, dread, you're actually excited to dig in.
Ah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the book really emphasizes that fostering engagement, it's not just about making employees happy, although that's obviously a good thing.
Right.
It actually has a lot of benefits for organizations as well. Like, we see increased productivity, we see less burnout.
Totally.
It's a win-win.
So how do we actually make that happen? Like, how do we boost engagement? Is there, like, a magic formula?
Well, I wish there was a magic formula,
Yeah, right.
but the book gives some really practical suggestions. And one that really stuck out to me was the emphasis on meaningful tasks.
Okay.
Because it makes sense, right? Like, no one wants to feel like they're just a cog in a machine, just churning through meaningless work. We all want to feel challenged. We want to see how our work contributes to something bigger.
Totally. That feeling of my work actually matters can be so huge. But how do you actually ensure that? I mean, how do you make sure that everyone's work feels meaningful? Especially, like, not every job is inherently glamorous.
Right. And that's where, another point the book makes, which is open communication.
Okay.
It's so important. So it's about creating a workplace
Yeah.
where employees feel heard, where they feel valued, where they feel empowered to actually contribute their ideas, to share feedback, to be open to different perspectives.
Yeah.
Because when you feel like your voice matters and that your contributions are actually valued, then it's amazing how much more engaging your work can actually become.
I can totally see that. Like, feeling like you're actually part of the solution and not just like a task completer. Right.
Exactly. And, speaking of feeling valued, the book also talks about the importance of recognition and reward. And I don't just mean bonuses and raises.
Right.
Although, those are always nice. But it's also about acknowledging and appreciating each other's efforts.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just a simple thank you can go so far.
Totally.
Or, giving a shout out to someone when they've done a
Wow.
great job. It really goes a long way to boost morale and engagement.
It's about feeling seen and appreciated for the contributions that you make, which kind of ties back to that sense of purpose, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, let's not forget about work-life balance.
Right.
If you're feeling like constantly burnt out and overworked, there's just no way you're going to feel engaged in your work.
For sure.
And so the book talks about creating a workplace culture that, maybe supports flexible work arrangements, maybe they offer wellness programs, just encourages employees to actually prioritize their well-being.
So it's really like a holistic environment that you're trying to create
Yes.
that nourishes, both the employee's professional life, but also their personal life. And that reminds me actually of the Islamic concept of Ihsan, which the book talks about a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great connection because, Ihsan encourages striving for excellence in everything that you do.
Right.
It's about viewing work, even as a form of worship.
Right. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
how can I bring my best self to this work? Not just for myself, but also as like a form of service,
It's really interesting.
So it adds like another layer to this idea of engagement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's almost like seeing your work through this completely different lens.
Yeah.
It's not just, checking things off a to-do list. It's bigger than that.
Exactly. It's about bringing that intention, that striving for excellence into everything that you do.
I love that.
Now, while striving for excellence is great, we also have to acknowledge that work isn't always going to be easy, right?
Right.
There are going to be challenges. There are going to be setbacks. There are going to be moments where you just want to pull your hair out.
Oh, for sure.
And that's where the next element of PRK comes in, resilience.
Resilience. It's that like ability to bounce back from setbacks, to deal with all the curveballs that work throws at you without totally losing it.
Yes. The book defines it as the capacity to adapt and thrive, even when things get tough. And the good news is, it's a skill that you can actually develop and get better at over time.
Oh, that is good news because let's face it, work can be tough. We've all had those crazy deadlines or difficult colleagues or like those projects that just totally flopped.
Totally. We've all
Yeah.
been there. But the book really emphasizes that resilience isn't about just like pushing through those tough emotions or pretending everything's okay.
Okay.
It's about creating healthy coping mechanisms and building up that mindset where you
Right.
can actually see setbacks as opportunities for growth, you know?
Oh, I love that. So it's not about just avoiding challenges altogether. It's about like learning how to navigate them in a way that actually makes you stronger.
Exactly. And one of the things the book highlights is like mindfulness and self-care are so essential for building resilience. One technique that really resonated with me was this idea of reframing your thoughts.
Okay, what's that?
So it's like when you notice yourself like spiraling, right?
Yeah.
Going down that negative thought pattern, you can actually choose to consciously reframe the situation into something more positive, or at least more constructive.
So instead of thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this project failed, I'm the worst, it's okay, what can I actually learn from this experience? Like, what can I do differently next time?
Exactly. It's like this subtle shift in thinking, but it can make a huge difference in how you deal with challenges.
Mm,
And this whole idea of like approaching challenges with patience and this focus on growth, it actually aligns really well with the Islamic principle of sabr.
Sabr, that's right, the book mentioned that.
Mm.
How does that tie into resilience?
Yeah, so sabr is often translated as patience or perseverance. It's about, facing those tough situations with grace and understanding that, yeah, challenges are just a part of life. It's about trusting that even when things are hard, there's still wisdom there and there's opportunity for growth.
So it's not about suppressing those difficult emotions, but like acknowledging the difficulty and then approaching it with patience and that determination, knowing that you have that strength to get through it.
Exactly, exactly. And that brings us to the final element of PERK, which is kindness.
Kindness. It seems a little counterintuitive, right? Especially in the workplace where it can feel so competitive.
Yeah.
But this book actually says that kindness is like crucial for creating a workplace where people can really thrive.
Hmm.
So why is that?
Well, think about it. When you're surrounded by people who actually care about each other, who are supportive, who are encouraging, I mean, wouldn't that naturally create a more positive and productive environment for everyone?
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. But what does that actually look like, kindness at work? Is it like baking cookies for your coworkers or something?
No, no, it's not about being a pushover. It's really about fostering a culture of empathy and respect and compassion, treating each other with dignity and understanding, even when you disagree or when things get stressful.
So, like, maybe helping a coworker who's feeling overwhelmed or really taking the time to listen to someone who's going through something.
Exactly. It's about celebrating each other's wins and then being supportive when things don't go as planned. It's about building a workplace where people can be themselves, where they can be authentic, and know that they're going to be met with kindness no matter what.
And that really connects with the Islamic principle of Rahmah, right?
Exactly. Rama is often translated as mercy or compassion, and it's about showing kindness and empathy towards everyone.
Hmm.
And in the context of work, it's about having that mutual respect, showing up with support and understanding for your colleagues.
Wow. When you put all of these pieces together, it really creates this beautiful picture of what work could be like. It's like this blueprint for a more humane and compassionate and honestly a more successful workplace for everybody.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, we've covered so much today. We went deep on the four elements of pure Kate purpose, engagement, resilience, and kindness. And we talked about how these principles are supported by like modern psychology, but also have these deep roots in traditions like Islam. It's really incredible to see the connections.
It is really fascinating.
So if someone is listening and they're feeling inspired to bring more perk into their own work life, where would you recommend they even begin? What would be the most impactful first step?
That's a tough one
Yeah,
because they all work so well together.
they do.
But if I had to choose, I'd say start with purpose. Because when you have a clear understanding of why you're doing what you're doing, it could really impact all of the other areas. It's easier to be engaged when your work has meaning to you. You can bounce back from those challenges so much better when you have that sense of purpose pushing you forward. And honestly, it can even make you a kinder and more compassionate person overall.
That makes so much sense. It's like purpose is that foundation,
Exactly.
and then everything else can just kind of bloom from there.
Yeah, it's about aligning what you do with what you care about and finding that sweet spot where your passions meet your work.
I love that. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I've learned so much. Thank you. And honestly, I don't know about you, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to Monday now.
That's amazing. I love to hear that.
Yeah. And for everyone listening, if you want to explore these ideas even further, definitely check out Being Happy at Work. It's packed with really practical advice and really inspiring stories. And as you're reading and reflecting, we want to hear from you. Let us know what resonates most. What's one small step that you can take this week to bring more purpose, engagement, resilience, or kindness into your own work life? Until next time, we hope you have a wonderful, fulfilling, and joy-filled week.